Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning on the Cyber Check for Schools webinar. Hope you're all okay. My name is Arti Patel Mistry. I'm the Cybersecurity Engagement Lead on behalf of the DFE, running this webinar today with my colleague George as a Cybersecurity Data Protection Advisor for Southwest Grid for Learning. This will be an
Morning, Artie.
interactive session. Morning. This will be an interactive session, everybody. For a couple of housekeeping rules, we've put everybody on mute. Please, we encourage everyone to put as many questions in the Q&A section. I've got colleagues in the background, hopefully answering as we go through the webinar. Just to also say the slides will be on the website as well, so you can refer to them at a later stage. Next slide, please, Helen. Right, so today we're going to cover the DFE cybersecurity standards and the whole portfolio of DFE standards that we have. The threat in the landscape currently in education, I think that's really important. We're going to give you a little walkthrough of the Cyber Secure tool that has become quite popular since we've launched it, and some further support and links if you're in unfortunate position of having a cyber threat within your setting. Next slide, please, Helen. So the digital standards, there's a number of digital standards that the DFE are trying to support schools with and have a framework around them. If you could put the next slide, please, Helen. And why have we got them? We want to have schools to have safe and reliable tech. The really important thing that the department are trying to do is ensure we increase costs, decrease costs, but increase efficiency. We want to make sure it's accessible for the school community and also for the children and parents and carers. We want to improve cyber resilience, and that's the focus really of our webinar today. It's really important in the latest trends that we're having. We want to reduce the risk of online harms. In all this, we want to actually improve and support teaching and also contribute to lessening the workload. Ultimately, we're all here about student outcomes, aren't we? That's what we're here for. Next slide, please. So in the portfolio of our digital standards, we have three main areas: connectivity, prevention of harms, efficiency, optimization. And they're listed as you can see on the screen. We're going to focus on cybersecurity. That's the area of my focus and George's focus in this webinar. Again, on gov.uk, you can see these standards and we'll share them with you with a link at the end. Next slide, please, Helen. So why have we got the standards? It's really important. We want to make sure that the standards are there for the whole school community. Often I hear across the country, oh, the standards are there, it's extra things we have to do. But actually the standards are there to support senior leadership team, the IT, including suppliers, so that we can challenge suppliers when we're doing recontracting. Any technical advisors that you have across the school improvement journey, obviously the teachers and governors, and ultimately the students. But the technology we're trying to support schools with is under all the standards that we've supported with. Next slide, please, Helen. So when we launched the standards, it was really important. What the department do here is we have to get a lot of user feedback. It's no point the department sitting there saying, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, unless we get the feedback from the sector directly. Throughout publishing the standards, there's been a whole array of user feedback. We've got lots of networks across up and down the country who've supported us to tell us what's it like on the ground level, what's it actually like for a small one from entry primary school to a large secondary, to a big multi-academy trust, to a small nursery, special school, and the list goes on. Our standards are there for the whole education sector. So it's really important. And these are a couple of things that I've just picked out from feedback that we've had regarding the standards. Next slide, please. So One of the big things in doing this role, I come from a background of education, have been there for over 30 odd years as a senior leader and a director of Multi Academy Trust. And one of the key things I noticed in our two main statutory documents, Keeping Children Safe in Education and Academy Trust Handbook, cyber was not mentioned. It was mentioned very loosely. What I've been able to do is add them into those statutory documents as a should. Schools should try and meet the cyber standards. Schools should try and meet the digital standards. It's not must. We're not there. Everybody's at a different journey. But what we've actually done is we've refreshed the standards to make them more simple and easy to use. And I want to stress that word, simple and easy. We've mentioned the digital leader. A digital leader within the cyber standards can be anyone from a senior leader to the IT technician to the IT director. It could be the safeguarding lead. It could be the admissions officer. It could be the exams officer. Each school, each area has its different context. And what we've been able to do is reduce the standards from 12 to 7. Really important that, because as you can appreciate, the cyber standards have been there in light of us going through COVID, online learning, interventions that have happened. We've been through a whole host of things, and the education technology area has drastically changed, and we need to ensure that we meet those standards to support schools as best we can. And what we've done there is we've put little QR code that you can scan and access them directly. Next slide, please. So what I've done here is I just want to go over, not in really sentence by sentence, is give you a very simple way of understanding the 7 standards. Conduct a cyber risk assessment annually. It's really important. As you do your safeguarding, as you do your health and safety audits, cyber audit is really, really important. A lot of schools that I work with, a lot of trusts up and down the country say this has been pivotal, especially when they're doing their school improvement journey, especially when they're doing their health and safety journey, especially when they're doing their business planning, because it affects budgets. I appreciate that. So doing a cyber audit is really important. Creating a cyber awareness plan for students and staff. And the reason why I put students first, you can appreciate some students, all students are very averse with their technology, sometimes more than our teaching community, our school community. And it's really about embedding the cyber awareness. There's lots and lots of literature out there, lots of support, lots of lesson planning out there. But also, how does that impact in your ICT policies, in your safeguarding policies? And understanding the anti-malware and firewall. Now, this particular standard, a lot of people said, Artie, it scares us. You know, I don't even understand that terminology. We're not expecting you to understand. You all have some sort of technical advice and guidance, either from your technical teams, your IT teams, if you're in a MAT, your local authority. It's really important to understand what support you're getting to ensure that you've got that what I call the umbrella protection for your school. Next slide, please, Helen. And the standards 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all about how to secure your accounts. Often you're going to get emails that you think, I didn't send this particular link, or somebody's trying to sell some documents or sell a great tool, and you know, naively you've clicked on it and it happens to be a phishing email or it happens to be a malware. You're not to know. It's really unfortunate that happens, but it's important we have controls. For example, as a senior leader, you know, you have DFE account, DFE sign in, the head, the principal will have that, but your safeguarding lead might have controls regarding access to CPOMs, and your heads of year or your office manager might have privileges. Your exams officers will have privilege. Ensuring the right privilege for that sensitive information is really important and controlled. Ensuring your licenses are up to date. Now, I can't stress this enough. The licenses are really important. I appreciate this is probably the school business professional within your organisation having to sort it, but having the security protocols and updates within any contracts that you're doing is really important. Have a backup plan. You have closure dates, you have snow dates. Have a backup plan for what if happens if you lose your data. What is your backup plan in relation to a cyber attack and all your systems go? We've had incidences where large trusts, large academies, even local authority schools have had to rely on the local authority. Small primary schools and nurseries have been affected. What is your protocol? If you're part of the RPA, the Risk Protection Arrangement, which is part of the DFE's Alternative to Commercial Insurance, there is a whole host of information that we could support you on that. The most important is standard 7. What do I do in a cyber attack? At this point, I'm going to pause. It's really important that at the moment, a lot of the sector do not inform the department. It's really important you tell the department. We can provide advice and guidance. We don't actually go into your school as a department. If you're part of the RPA, they do it. They have people will come in, assess, support, and deal with it to get you back up alive and working. The last thing we want to do is lose educational days, but it's also important to report it. I appreciate you report to the ICO, Action Fraud, but we are here to support, and it's really important to have that within your understanding of your review and implementation plan. Your cyber response plan is really important at this stage. Next slide, please, Helen. So I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, George, who has a wealth of experience and will go through the latest information on the cyber threat across the schools and also across the educational sector. Thank you, George.
Thanks, Artie. So in terms of the importance of the standards, we're going to take a bit more of a deep dive into the current threat landscape. And then we're going to look at some of the tools and resources that DFE are making available to you to help address that threat. Next slide, please, Helen. So if we look at the numbers, that tells us all we need to know. In terms of year on year, so on the left-hand side here, we see the results from the latest DCIT survey. And what that shows us, of the schools that participated in that survey, 52% of primary schools and 71% of secondary schools have reported incidents. Now that's up roughly 10% year over year on the 2023 results. So the sample pool is still relatively small, back to Artie's point about schools, academies reporting incidents, but that trend line is increasing. We're seeing year over year about 10% of schools reporting breaches of one sort or another. In terms of the details, on the right-hand side, we see number of the key threats that schools are reporting. And again, year over year, we're seeing number of different threat types and those threats being reported in a much more granular way. So for example, this year, you'll see down towards the bottom, denial of service attacks. This didn't appear in last year's survey, but we're starting to get that granular view, that understanding of what the threat landscape looks like. And again, I won't go through these figures in detail. If you haven't already looked at it, then on the DCIT site in Annex, there is an education report, and it goes into this information in a lot more detail. But suffice it to say, the numbers are demonstrating that education, schools, primary and secondaries, are under attack. Next slide, please, Helen. And sadly, you know, none of us will have missed the many posts that we typically see now, either on social media or online, of schools that have suffered from an attack of one form or another. Even at the start of the new term recently, there were a number of other schools and MATs in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. And so, you know, the threat landscape is very visible and it's very real. Next slide, please, Helen. Okay, so what does this mean then? What's the net of this? And if we look on the left-hand side of this slide, there's a number of key factors in play within the school's landscape. The motive, primarily, all of the details we saw on the last slide, the primary motive is ransom. It's the biggest threat for schools. Comes in different forms, but ultimately it's about trying to extort money from schools and educational establishments. There's a lot to cover. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of different dimensions. We'll look at those in detail in a moment, but it's very difficult to ensure you're covering all the different aspects of security that you need to. As Artie mentioned, the need to report is important. As we've seen, again, about a 10% increase, but DFE saw 143 incidents reported, and that's up 10%. So please do lodge that report, because that gives us more information around the different threats and how we can best protect you and your school in terms of mitigating threat. So there's a clear call to action on DFE and its partners to provide tools and techniques and resources that can help you address your security in your school and create those digital capabilities in the security space. In terms of why is that important and impact, on the right hand side we see some of the broader reasons why this is important. And again, they too are broad. Everything from simple fact that a school can't open. That happened at the start of this term, where a school had to delay opening by 2 days because of a threat attack. Of course, there's the impact on the pupils themselves in terms of, creating a great environment for them to learn. That can be disrupted. There's the financial and the legal aspects of it. The information we're trying to protect in our digital landscape has sensitive personal information, and there's a whole host of implications if that information gets into the hands of the wrong people. Last but by no means least, in terms of presenting our school at its best, we don't want to be one of those establishments that is put up on social media, and particularly if we're deemed not to have been able to deal with the threat appropriately. Next slide, please, Helen. Okay, so how can we help? To that point, what is DFE making available to you in terms of tools, resources to support? And for the remainder of today's presentation, we're going to look at a tool called CyberSecure. First of all, this tool, this important tool, comes to you with no charge. It's free of charge, and therefore we'd really encourage you to use it. It's a means of allowing you to undertake an assessment and to baseline where you are in terms of your security capabilities, and then identify where potential gaps are and build appropriate plans to make sure your security posture is growing stronger month over month, year over year. The tool has been developed with the standards in mind. And when we initially worked with DFE, we had the 12 standards. That's now been enhanced. We've just brought on stream the new version that's been changed to reflect the 7 standards that Artie took us through, and some key changes in that. Artie mentioned in terms of standard 2 the importance of providing education to students as well. The tool has been updated to ensure that that's reflected, and when you do your assessment, you're not only looking at staff training, but you're looking at the training and development that you're putting in place for your key students. And again, QR code there. In order to get the tool, feel free to use this QR code. Also, we'll be providing the links to it in due course. Thanks, Helen. Next slide, please. So how does it work? As I say, it's an assessment tool. It enables you to look at your security capabilities through 23 different aspects. We'll look at those in detail. When you use the tool, you do it anonymously. So ARTE, DFE, can't see the results. We want you to feel confident in using this tool, and therefore the results that you have are anonymous. They're only visible to you. However, because we can see the broader landscape, we are in a position to give some relative indication of how your security posture assesses against others. And again, we'll look at that in a moment. The whole idea of the tool, and we'll look at the reporting capabilities, is really to drive informed decision making around how you're going to address security in your school, and some of the key capabilities you feel that you need to focus in on and have in place. The tool itself is strong. It gives you a baseline, as I say. It also gives you the mechanism to review progress on an ongoing basis. But the tool also contains many, many resources, links to best practices from DFE, but from some of our partners, National Cyber Security Council, for example. So lots of resources in there that you can leverage and you can put in place within your school. Thanks, Ellen. Next slide. Like most assessment tools, we work on the basis of a sort of maturity rating from 1 to 5, where 1 is low rating of maturity, 5 is very strong, outstanding maturity. Now, we've also in this tool, however, added a level 0. And that's because the way in which you use the tool and undertake the assessment, in some areas, you may feel none of the 1 to 5 matches your current situation. So 0 is there just to enable you to record that, you know, none of the others is a good fit. And in itself, that's built into the assessment and how you would move forward from there. I mentioned 23 aspects. These sit within 3 core elements that you see here, A, B, and C. The human side, looking at it through the lens of people, the infrastructure, the software and hardware, the systems, applications that are in place within your environment, and last but by no means least, looking at the policies and processes and plans you have in place and governance around organization. Helen, next slide, please. Okay, so you undertake the survey. The main output that you receive is what's colloquially known as the spider chart, the spider diagram. And this is an example here. So I'll just spend a little bit of time explaining this to you because this is key in terms of you know, how you analyze and assess and how you make decisions to move forward. Around the outer ring are those 23 aspects organized by the 3 core elements. And for each of those, you have a set of questions, you know, 1 to 5, that enable you to assess each of those aspects. And so in this diagram here, there's 3 key areas. Okay, the green is your score. It's your main output. The dotted line, dotted blue line, is where DFE, where we would like you to get to from a maturity perspective. And that's basically a 3. And then I mentioned that the tool also gives you the ability to do a relative assessment versus your peers and other educational establishments. And that's the darker blue line. So what you can see in this example is in a couple of areas, so event monitoring and governance, this school is actually in line with DFE standards and is ahead of educational establishments overall. And then in a number of other areas, we find that there are gaps. We're perhaps not as strong as our peers in those areas. And it's by using this type of technique that we can identify where the potential where the gaps are, and potentially where we need to focus our efforts and resources. Next slide, please, Helen. So it's all about the information that you get from this tool. That's what drives decision making and ultimately drives the action that you're going to take to maintain a strong security posture. It comes in different forms, so it's quite granular. I spoke earlier about the ability to provide high level input to leadership discussions within the school, etc. And that's the progress summary report. From there, we can dive down into more of the detail, understanding the nuances of the gaps and where we can improve our maturity. And then ultimately draw upon the resources that the tool has. We can create the action plan that guides us with recommendations as to how we can continue to maintain our security and develop the security capabilities that are going to give us confidence that we're nice and strong. I mentioned earlier, it's not just a baseline tool. It's not about telling us where we are currently. The assessment tool can be reused on a regular basis, we would say minimally annual basis, to review progress. So we keep taking the assessment and we can see the results of where we've put the focus and effort in to improve some of those different elements. And of course, the tool allows you to do that either through the central resources, the systems that the tool resides on, or gives you the ability to take that offline and use that information in whatever way or manner you would want to. So a lot of information in the tool. The dashboard is key to getting that out and making sense of it. Thanks, Helen. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to hand off to colleague Andrew. There's a short video and Andrew's going to walk you through it in much more detail.
It's Andrew here from Southwest Grid for Learning, online safety and information security consultant, and lead with this project in partnership with the Department for Education. I'm here just to give you a quick little insight into CyberSecure, just to help you understand where everything is and how you'll get access to content. CyberSecure is a variation of our existing 360 tools. You may already be familiar with one of these. There's 360° Safe, 360 Early Years, 360 Groups, and variations in Scotland and Wales. All of those tools are built on the same engine, which CyberSecure is also making use of. So, in line with all of these tools, you land on the home page, and most school or organisations are going to end up here in the Dashboard tab. Here you'll find the now familiar radar graph. The radar graph here gives you the overall summary of where you are as a school. Over time, as you get more data into the tool, it'll give you a comparative look at where you are compared to other schools in the national level based on the data that's been going into the tool. In terms of accessing the actual content, there are a number of different ways in which you can do that. You might choose to click individually and jump into a particular aspect just by clicking on the radar diagram, as I did here. And there's a whole range of reports and assessments and certificates that are available in this tool as well. Some users will also go up here to the Assessment tab in the sidebar to access the different elements, strands, and aspects. We've split the content up into 3 elements. We've got people, systems, and organisation. And then within each element are a set of strands. So if you look at systems, there are 4 strands here. Selecting technology reveals that there are 4 aspects, B1 through to B4. The technology strand here focuses on the security and backup of systems and devices. You can click onto one of the aspects and then get into the actual self-review framework content. What we're going to do is dive straight in here and look at an individual aspect, B1. Now in this tool, we've introduced a new level, a level 0. Level 0 runs across all 23 aspects and is none of the other levels reflects where we are. This is all about best fit. So the idea here is you're looking for a statement that best fits your school at this point in time. And it may be for you right now that none of the other levels quite apply in that best fit way. Users of our existing 360 tools will notice that we flip the numbering order. So now 1 is poor and 5 is strong, which is a bit of a head change for those of you who are familiar with the content. But it does make sense in the sense that it's going from a low number to a high number as things get better. The idea here, of course, is you look at this, you choose the statements that most accurately represents where you are, and then we'll automatically give you some improvement actions to make progress towards the next step and the next level. We've simplified the way in which you can now record where you are, what you're doing, the evidence of what you're doing, and where you're going by adding a new tab to our aspects page. Using this will enable you to record your journey to demonstrate how you're making progress through the tool. Now at this stage, we're suggesting that level 3 is going to be where we're hoping schools are. That's what we're aiming for as a start point. If you're operating at level 4 or 5, then as a school, you're doing incredibly well. Level 3 is where we're really hoping schools will move towards fairly rapidly. Obviously, there are a lot of risks out there around ransomware and cyber attack, so it'd be great to start making some inroads into protecting yourselves. Once you've done this, in terms of accessing your aspects and selecting where you are and recording your journey, you might want to get a report on that. You can generate a number of different reports in line with our existing tools. For example, the Progress History Report provides a representation of your journey over time, who's accessing it, what type of data you're on, and how you're doing compared to other schools and organisations within the tool. Those reports can then be shared with governors or directors or other stakeholders to help the ownership and governance around cyber and information security to really embed what is a significantly important aspect in today's society. And there you have it, a quick overview of CyberSecure and how it can help you and your school review and develop your cyber and information security posture. There's more, of course, than what's here in this video, so please do have a look around. If you need help at any time, our contact form can be found at the bottom of every page.
Well, I hope you find that interactive video helpful. Can I also say that that video is actually on the website as well? After receiving feedback, a lot of schools who are accessing the tool said it's really important you have that, Artie. The other thing was we have actually updated our FAQs after receiving feedback from our people that have registered with the tool. So an up-to-date FAQ is also on the website. As part of our reviewing process, we conducted a 6-month survey. These are a couple of the stats. 83% of schools across the sector said, it increased their cyber understanding, which is great and fantastic. Over 1,000 schools have registered now. We're actually on, I think, 1,220. I'm sure B will correct me, but we're getting more and more. Now, the tool is there for you to start your journey. As with everything, it takes time. I'm completely aware of that. But what it does, it gives you a foundation. For those schools who have embarked on Cyber Essentials or other security qualifications, accreditation, that's perfectly fine. We found that a lot of schools were very, very at an early stage of their cyber understanding, and we want to encourage them to understand the cyber standards and understand the tool. Schools have then over 13% of 15%, I think, have completed their tool and assessment. And what they found is that they still want to improve, and that's great. But what it's actually done is supported them in their business planning, their understanding of technology, their IT development, and also the teaching and learning elements within the relevant subject area, faculty areas. Next slide, please, Helen. So, what I'd like to say is the next steps. Please, we would encourage you all to register. Register. You can have multiple registers. For example, if you are a director of a MAT and you want to see if all your schools had registered, that's perfectly fine. If you wanted to get a report on where each school is at to help with your overall business planning, you can do that. Each school will have to register separately. The reason behind that is unique to your school, and the data we pull is peer-to-peer information regarding your school context and your school setting. We'd encourage you to look at the DfE cyber standards. I think a lot of colleges, schools, primaries, nurseries, alternative provision have said that have been really helpful to understand a more simplistic way of the standards and marrying them up to the tool, which is great. As I said before, anything to do with inquiry regarding registration or understanding the tool, how it works, please contact Southwest Grid for Learning on that particular email address. Sector inquiries, that's access to myself if you want any information, if you want any unique conversations. And I say unique purely because sometimes it's difficult to understand what you're trying to explain in relation to cyber, and want to have some advice and guidance in relation to support for lobbying to your senior leadership team, or perhaps understanding the relationship with a local authority or a particular supplier, please do get in touch and let's have that conversation. As I said before, NCSC offer cybersecurity training. It's a 40-minute training session which you can download a certificate once your teaching school community have done it. My advice is you do that particular training when you do your annual safeguarding training. That will help you so much to get that awareness raising a bit more concrete across your school community. Unfortunately, if you do have a cyber threat or cyber incident, we have a cyber incident reporting team. You report to them, explain what's happened. They will send you the relevant guidance links, also information regarding some technical information if you're part of RPA. I appreciate that, contacting the local police and action fraud and ICO may be the statutory requirements, but we've provided you links there. Next slide, please, Helen. What I'd like to do now is also focus on the fact that I have said about the frequency of our updating of the FAQs. Sometimes FAQs are there for you for guidance, but actually provoke a reaction or a further conversation internally within your school community, and that's perfectly fine. We've done the FAQs because often this is a very difficult subject to understand, added on to the many jobs that you all have. But what we want to make sure is that each, depending on what level you're at, which in your school or your educational setting, it doesn't matter. It's there for information. It's there for you to access, and we're here to support regarding this area. As George and I have said, the cyber landscape, especially in the educational setting, is increasing regarding the threat actors that we have, the threat incidences we're getting, and we want to ensure the education sector is becoming a bit more aware of what's happening, and hopefully this webinar has supported you. Now, I'm not sure about the questions here, George, if there are any questions.
Well, we have time. We've got about 7 minutes. If anyone has any questions, as Artie said right up front, please feel free to post any questions you may have in the Q&A, and we can see them here and hopefully answer a question or two. Just to reinforce the point that you made, Artie, for those unfamiliar with using these types of assessment tools, it can often be a little bit daunting. You register and you get your account set up, and then you think, oh, right, what happens when I hit the start button? But as Artie said, please don't stop there. If you're not sure, and if you want a little bit of a run through of what that experience will be, then reach out to us at cybersecure@swgfl.org.uk. We'd rather you ask questions that lead to you confidently starting the assessment than just putting it on the side pile, as it were. So please do ask, no question. We don't assume people are familiar with these types of tools. So we've got all of the resources to help you, either through the FAQ that Artie referenced, but also there's that mailbox there. Feel free to ask.
Great.
Okay, so let's just see if we have any questions. I don't think we have. B has been posting a lot of links into the Q&A. As Artie's been explaining, there really are a lot of resources behind this, from general advice down to specific details around the standards, and some of the partner organisations that are there to support us as well.
And I think finally, just to say is that we've got a lot of templates on our website, and why the reason that we've done that is because the department doesn't have a unique set of templates. What we rather do is provide you links to other organizations that have those templates that you can download and use to your usage. And also the idea behind it, and I can't stress enough of this is information that you put on is confidential. I don't get to see what you've written in your narrative. An example was a school contacted me, said, Artie, we've just had our safeguarding meeting and we put the narrative in the tool. We want to get access to that and add it to our reporting. You can do that. That's not an issue. If there's a problem, contact Southwest Grid. They will support you on that. What I would say to you is that as and when you're having your quarterly meetings or your half-termly meetings regarding any of this, always think about cyber. What's the implication on teaching and learning, the infrastructure, the systems that you have, and just add that awareness raising. It can be a bit daunting, but please, this is too important for the school to lose its educational days.
Yeah.
I'm conscious there might be no more questions, George. Sorry.
Yeah. What I wanted to do then, often our audience tends to be mixed representatives from schools themselves, but also
Yeah.
the multi-academy trusts. And whilst it's not come up today in the Q&A, for those people that are here representing MATs, the way the tool's been designed is it's structured in such a way that you can use the assessment tool either at individual school level, or if you are part of a MAT, you can set it up through that lens as well. So each individual school can see their own results, but at a MAT level, either you can see the collective results from the schools that are within the MAT, or you can undertake the assessment at an overarching MAT level. So it's very granular and it's very easy to get a number of different lenses. And as a MAT, you might want to look at the relative strengths and weaknesses through your set of schools and educational establishments. So that one tends to come up quite a lot, and I thought it would be useful for the audience today just to understand that the tool enables you to set it up and to use it based upon how you're organised, either as individual schools or as part of a multi-academy trust. Let's just see if we have any more
questions.
Here we go. Once we register, can you add others from within our organisation to view tool information? Absolutely. So each assessment requires a unique administrative account. That's the main account that you set up. Thereafter, that account owner can bring others in from the school. They can set up not admin accounts, but just general accounts. And so, yes, you can actually give other people access to the tools, the dashboards, and the information and results that are available through that dashboard. So thank you for that question. And yes, this is about inclusion and collaboration. So again, we try and make the tool as flexible as we can so that if you want to share as the administrator for your account, you can do that very easily.
Then I'll give you an example of that. I worked with a MAT who had at a particular school, they had the deputy head, they had the head of safeguarding, they had their IT manager, they had the school business manager as a little small project team. And the idea behind, they wanted to have a cyber response plan. And in order to do that, they wanted to make sure the relevant people that had the decision-making process were there. So they all registered onto the tool, and each individual had a particular element that they had to complete and add to the narrative. The school business manager's responsibility was to then get that information, upload it into a report format, which is called a progress report, and then they had a meeting with the head teacher just to add that to their SLT agenda item. So this is a practical way of ensuring that you're going through the tool with 3 heads are better than 1, but more importantly, people have got different skill set and different responsibilities. So it gives you a little bit of an example. That particular trust did it with 1 primary school, 2 form entry, 1 large 1800 on roll, secondary, and a special school. And that MAT now has completed their assessment. What that's happened, it's actually opened up a whole new way of thinking regarding their school improvement journey regarding digital services within their teaching and learning. So you can see how the whole idea of raising awareness of cyber supports the business side of the school, but also teaching and learning. So it just gives you a little example there.
Lovely.
So
We're just time for
coming
one
to
last
the
one.
end.
We're on time. Sorry, just to nick your post. You're a user, but you don't know your admin. Just drop quick email to cybersecure@swgfl.org.uk and we'll get you sorted out there. And so too, there's a question about how do we set up that architecture with the MAT and the individual schools. Can't get to that question now, but please do drop an email and we'll explain that. It's relatively straightforward. Sorry, Artie.
So,
Back
yeah,
to
thank
you.
you. So on behalf of George and I and the Department in South West Grid Finland, really, really thank you for attending. And on behalf of us also, thank you for all the work you do in schools. We appreciate this is another thing that we're asking you to do, but it's really important. I'm really passionate that we get cyber on anybody's agenda in the decision-making process. So thank you so much, and we'll close the webinar now. Thank you.
Thanks, Artie. Bye.
I don't know if